Good evening to all of our viewers and listeners. We should like to speak about Yom Kippur. And the title of the Shiur is that Yom Kippur is a great and powerful day. The source for this appellation of Yom Kippur is to be found in Tfilos Zakot, that the Chai Odom, the one who succeeded going to be the Rav of Vilna, formulated. And he states, "V'nosato lonu es Yom Kippurim hazeh yom adil v'kodosh." You've given us Yom Kippurim. It is a powerful day and also a holy day. Of course, we understand that it is a holy day. It's called a Yom Kodosh. It's endowed with intrinsic sanctity, and it's also a very powerful day, as the Rambam states at the beginning of Hilchos Tshuva, "Shitzumoy shel Yom Kippurim is mechaper." That which on Yom Kippur we have a concept of atonement, which per se is a very mysterious concept. It's a very abstract concept. How can one undo the past? After all, Yom Kippur is mechaper for mitzvahs loy taseh, mitzvahs that we committed with our hands. They were physical acts. They were averos that we committed. And we know that something which was done, like the Mesilas Yesharim says, Dover Shenasa, something which was done cannot be undone. We can't go and, so to speak, retroactively relive the moment and, as it were, try to erase and expunge it. So nevertheless, for these averos that we did, Yom Kippur, although as we say, the concept of atonement is per se mysterious, Yom Kippurim is mechaper, and that is the chief main instrumentality. Yom Kippur itself, as abstract as it sounds, is mechaper, but it's only going to be mechaper for people that are called shovim, that repented. We'll soon see what exactly this concept of atonement, which will only take effect for people that have repented, means. On the other hand, there's perhaps a greater significance to Yom Kippurim, and it's a day of reconciliation between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and man. As we all know that in every Avera that, God forbid, we violate the mitzvah of the Torah. So there's a double aspect to it. There's two negative component parts. On the one hand, we have done an act which is an act of rebelling against the wishes of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We thought maybe there would be a profit, we would have a momentary pleasure, and it's a very strong possibility that we discounted what the consequences would be. Our motive was to have some sort of benefit and pleasure, like the Chazal say, nobody commits a sin unless it's unwittingly, but if it's wittingly, unless he actually believes he'll derive some sort of physical pleasure, social status, some sort of monetary benefit. So those are the reasons why a person usually commits an act of rebelling against the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that also caused his personality to become corrosive, polluted, and therefore, insofar as his relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is concerned, he might have enjoyed a very, very close relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but now the pollution and the corrosion, so to speak, is very destructive, and he's just not capable, because he corrupted his inner personality, to enjoy the same relationship that he had with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu beforehand. So we see over here that there is an aspect of reconciliation as well as of atonement. And it's very, very possible that somebody before Yom Kippur could be completely estranged, completely defiled from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and suddenly he can regain a very close, intimate relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, as the Rambam points out that Emesh Oyazeh Rochik, yesterday, before Yom Kippur, or it could be even during the year. If somebody does the proper tshuva, a person was removed from having a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He did mitzvahs, the Kadosh Baruch Hu ignored his mitzvahs, disregarded his tefillas, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu held him to be a repulsive being. Nevertheless, once he did tshuva, he repented. So today, Kadosh Baruch Hu accepts all of his mitzvahs, hearkens to his tefillas, and as it were, is a yedid with this individual. He walks hand in hand. There's a close relationship between the two. However, insofar as what we spoke about a moment ago, atonement for the actual Averis, so Yom Kippur plays the significant role, and we do not have to do too much. We don't have to do the regular tshuva for an Avera that we do in the course of the year. If we want to do tshuva for a certain Avera, so we have three elements of tshuva. We need recognition and awareness. That's called Akara Sachet, that we did an Avera. And then we need a deep-seated regret. And we have to face HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, Chatosi, Ovisi, Pashati. These are different levels of violating the Ratzon, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then we have to accept upon ourselves that we shall never, never return to that state of being rebellious. And we have to be so confident in ourselves, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. This is also a very integral part of tshuva, and that is that we have to, as it were, make HaKadosh Baruch Hu witness our sincerity to make sure the act of tshuva is, from the beginning to the end, the act of integrity and honesty. A very difficult thing, but in Yom Kippur, we don't have to do all those things, because Yom Kippur itself, the day of Yom Kippur, is a powerful day. It's a Yom Adir, is a day which the Rambam calls the Tzumah Shel Yom, has a tremendous strength, that if we passed by Yom Kippur 24, 26 hours, so at the end of the day, a person is forgiven for all of his mitzvahs loisa, say that he committed. It's a matnas elokim. We'll see exactly what it means to be a gavra d'shov, a person that's called repentant without having to do all the different aspects of tshuva. Yom Kippur, we do not have to do all the difficult, intricate component parts that tshuva all year long require, because we have this matnas elikim of itzumah shel yom, the strength and power of the day, that brings about our forgiveness. But nevertheless, we have to point out something very important. The Mishnah in Yuma states emphatically, all transgressions between man and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yom Kippur indeed atones for it. Yom Kippur atones for it. The Gemara will tell us that you have to be a gavra d'shov. You have to also do tshuva, but on a mediocre level, not on a genuine. It has to be, of course, an act of integrity, or you don't need the entire scope and the all-inclusiveness that tshuva generally requires. Nevertheless, averish menodom lechaveiroi ein Yom Kippur mechaper asher ratze es chaveiroi. And that was the drasha of Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, Mikol chatoiseichem, all of your sins, lifnei Hashem, that were bein odom lamokum, between you and the Almighty, so Yom Kippur will be mechapel. Yom Kippur is mechapel, but averish menodom lechaveiroi ein Yom Kippur mechapel. It's as if Yom Kippur loses its power, it loses its strength. It cannot be mechapel averish bein odom l'chaveiroi. It can't. What will precipitate Yom Kippur? What will cause, as if it were metaphorically, for Yom Kippur to arouse out of a type of passivity and to atone for Averis Bein Adam l'chaveiroi, between interpersonal relationships between man and his fellow man, till he appeases his friend and he tells him how sorry he is and he has to appease him. It's a long process, and that is accepted halacha l'maisa. The Shulchan Aruch paskins that way. So, the Shulchan Aruch Tov Reish Vav states, until he appeases him, pacifies him, he insulted him. He said unkind words, which caused the individual that heard these to have his feelings hurt. So tzarich lefaisai. And if he's not mefayis, he does not appease him, so therefore Yom Kippur will not be mechaper. It's as if the atonement of the essential day, of the powerful day of Yom Kippur, is split in two. For bein adam l'chaveiroi, interpersonal relationships, you need achiyiratza es chaveiroi, a total appeasement, and the relationship has to be restored like it was before, close, friendly, cordial, without any resentment whatsoever, despite the fact that before this act of appeasement, the person felt resentment in his heart to that person that committed this iniquity regarding him. We would ostensibly come to the conclusion that mitzvahs bein adam l'chaveiroi are more severe than mitzvahs bein adam l'makayim. In other words, insofar as us trying to establish not a philosophical outlook, but more halachic type of view, what is more important? What stands out? What is more salient and significant? Mitzvahs bein adam l'chaveiroi, positive mitzvahs as well as negative aveiros. These are more significant, or mitzvahs and aveiros bein adam l'makayim. So this is not a difficult question, because we have the Rishonim that address this issue. As a point of departure, insofar as this is concerned, we'll take a look at the Mishnah in Peah. Of course, that Mishnah that's mentioned in the Sidurim does not have the original version of the Mishnayos. But here we have Maseches Peah, Perek Rishon. Elu Dvar Shein Lahem Shiur. We say it every morning after Birchas HaTorah. HaPeah v'Habikurim v'Harayon v'Midas Chasodim v'Talmud Torah. Now, we say something in addition to that. That's from the Mishnah in Peah, and we say the following: Elu dvarim she'odam eichel peirosei b'olam hazeh la'keren kayemes lo l'olam haba. The principal reward a person will get lo'idam haba hayom la'asoi su'machar l'kabel schar. That's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu initiated the whole idea of reward and punishment. Today you do, in the world to come, you'll be rewarded or punished. You can also be punished in this world, but we're talking about reward will be in the world to come. Nevertheless, there's an exception to the rule, and there are dividends that are going to be paid in this world. For what? Kibud aveim, ugemilas chasodim, respecting parents and doing good deeds, and bringing about the harmony between man and his fellow man. The Talmud Torah connected kulo. The Talmud Torah, so that equals all of these three. So we have a very interesting question over here. From what we have in the original Mishnah, in the Sidurim, they added things based on Gemaras, but basically speaking, in Mishnayos, Rabbeinu HaKadosh formulated that insofar as Akara Kayemes Lo Yibam Habod, the essential reward for these mitzvahs a person will be able to attain in the world to come, nevertheless, partial reward he'll be able to reap in this world. What is the common denominator between these three? Bein Adam l'chaveroi. And the Rosh points this out. The Perish Rosh from the great Rishonim brings down the Gemara, a fascinating Gemara. We'll see the Gemara in one moment. First, we'll see the formulation of the Rosh. Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu chofetz yoisel b'mitzvahs sheyaseh bohem gam rotzain habriyos b'mitzvahs shebein Adam l'koyma. HaKadosh Baruch Hu prefers mitzvahs that you do for rotzain habriyos. Kindness, everybody wants to be the recipient of kindness. Everybody is a nitzrach. Everybody needs a good morning. Everybody needs a smile. Everybody needs a warm personal relationship. On occasion, a person is needy for other things as well. This is called gemilas chasadim begufa. You have gemilas chasadim, kindness, generosity, in a monetary term and also in a human interrelationship term. Menschlichkeit. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu prefers mitzvahs bein Adam lechaveroi over mitzvahs bein Adam lemalkaim. That's why these three are singled out, and these three have a common denominator. They're bein Adam lechaveroi. Gemilas chasadim, of course, bein Adam lechaveroi. Kibbud aveim, no question about that. These are bein Adam lechaveroi, and also the Rambam points that out. V'avoah shaloi. Somebody who strives to bring harmony between two people that at this point have a division between them, so that's surely bein Adam l'chaveroi. That's the goal orientation of the Jewish people, to be one harmonious, indivisible entity. But there's no question about that, and that's what the Rosh says. So if we would ask ourselves a question, right? Did the Rosh have some sort of source before he said a svara based on this Mishnah, or it's exclusively derived from this Mishnah? So the Rosh brings down the Gemara in Kedushin. It's open Gemara. The Gemara discusses two psukim that seem to be incongruous. The first pasuk is from Yeshaya, Perek Gimel, pasuk Yud. Imru l'tzadik shehu toiv. Tell a tzaddik who is good. What do you tell him? You tell him that there's going to be a reward. Free malaleim. He'll be able to, from the fruit of his good deeds, that he's a tzaddik, so he'll be able to benefit from. But we say a tzaddik who is good. And then the Gemara says, oy, woe, unto a Rasha who is bad. So the Gemara asks the question. The Gemara is in Kedushin Daf Mem. That it's superfluous. If I say someone's a tzaddik, of course he's good, self-evident. If we say somebody is a Rasha, it's self-evident that he's bad. So what did the Yeshaya have in mind when he said a tzaddik who is good, an evil person who is bad? And once I say the designation evil person, we know he's bad. If he would be good, he wouldn't be an evil person. So the Gemara says an unbelievable answer. Who is the tzaddik that is good? One who is good to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and one who is good labriyos to people. So he's a good tzaddik. But if he's only good to the Rebbeinu Shalom and bad to people, so this is a tzaddik that is not good. A tzaddik who is good is toiv lamokoim, toiv labriyas. A tzaddik that's bad is a bad tzaddik, is somebody who is good to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he's bad to the briyas. What is called a Rasha Shehura, a Rasha that's bad, it says he's bad to the Rebbeinu Shalom and he's bad to people. But what happens if he's only bad to the Rebbeinu Shalom and he's good to people? So he's a Rasha that's good. So you can have a good Rasha, not a Rasha Shera, a Rasha Shetoif. Difficult Gemara, but this is what the Rosh brings down prior to his statement, prior to his conclusion. So clearly, if we take a look at the Maharsha, Rashi, what do we see here? The Gemara describes a tzaddik that's not good, because he's good to people, he's good to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's not good to people. Does that mean that he's bad to people? He goes out of his way, does averos? No. Not necessarily. It doesn't refer to someone who does not observe mitzvahs bein adam l'chaveira at all. But rather, it speaks of a person who indeed involves himself in both categories of mitzvah bein adam l'chaveira, but settles for a mediocre standard of observance when it comes to mitzvahs involving interpersonal relationships. In other words, he's yotzeh. He fulfills it, but he's not involved in it. He'll say good morning without smiling. We're not talking about somebody who doesn't belong to a civilized society. He's bad to people all day long. He does evil to people. That the Rishonim and the Maharsha said that's not the case. It's a question of what quality does his behavior consist of? He's not involved with it. He does whatever the minimum standard is. Could be by Benot Mocham, he does the maximum. So this, says the Rosh, is his proof from a Gemara Mefureshes that you have a good Rosh. Why is he a Rosh? Because he's not involved so much. But he's called good. What's good about him? Says the Rosh, because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself prefers the goodness of mitzvahs asay ben Adam lechaveiroi over mitzvahs asay that's beinoi between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and man himself. So we have over here. We have clear from the Rosh, the Gemara, and from the Mishnah that Averos, Ben Adam, the Chaveiroi are more severe. Yom Kippur will not help you unless Achirates Chaver has to appease his fellow man. Mashain Cain, insofar as, in contrast, the Averos, Ben Adam, Lamokain, so Yom Kippur will be mechaper with a minimum tshuva. And we'll soon see what that means. So at this juncture, right, we should now try to analyze what exactly is required of us, at least insofar as Averis ben Odom Mokoim is concerned. This is the question that we should like to address ourselves presently. Before we do that, it would be quite important for us, before we answer this question, it would be quite important for us to understand a very important point here. Insofar as the vidui, the confession of Yom Kippur is concerned, and the confessional al-chetz we have also been odin l'mokum, also been odin l'chaveiroi. But before we get into that, we should like to just mention one important point, and that is what the Shloh HaKodesh said. The Shloh was a Rov for 30, 40 years. And he said at the end of his career that he never saw, never, anybody appeasing his enemies. In all the years that he was a Rov, so he did see Erev Yom Kippur, like the Shulchan Aruch said, right? If it's just an insult, he has to appease him. He never saw anybody appeasing his enemies, the ones that he had as machlokes with, a strife with them. It's a Shulchan Aruch Tov Reish Vav, Erev Yom Kippur, you have to appease your fellow man. He said he saw it only by his friends. A person appeased his friends, who he didn't have to appease. His enemies he never appeased. Why is that? Because the truth of the matter is, a person has, like the Shloh HaKodesh points out, he be'emes has a type of self-image where a person has a type of self-love, a self-glorification, and he simply cannot admit that he did something wrong. Somebody once said, I'm not always right, but I'm never wrong. So to admit that you were wrong is a very, very courageous state, because somehow or other it shatters this illusion that a person has of he only sees its milas, he only sees the positive parts of his life. He's very satisfied with himself, and on occasion he weaves a halo of glory around his head. This is, of course, due to the egoism and self-love that people possess. And if so, it is very, very difficult for this individual to come to a truthful realization that he did something wrong. And when he says al-chet, correct, he shouldn't hit his heart, he should hit his head, because that's where it emanated from. A miscalculation, a major mistake that he made. Therefore, a genuine admission, confession that I did something wrong, or maybe even more than one thing, I did an injustice to somebody, is very difficult for a person to come to that. And this law, we don't need many proofs. We have a very classic proof. And the truth of the matter is that even though people complain that the al-chet is very long, the truth of the matter is that the Ikar Adin, basically speaking, if somebody said, so then he's yoytze the mitzvahs vidu Yom Kippur. The confession of Yom Kippur is very short, brief. Of course, he has to mean it. The al-chet is a din lechatchila of pirut achet, of details insofar as all the chatayim are concerned. Meaning Yisrael was to accept, like the Bach says, to accept this din lechatchila. And a person should know if it's difficult, too difficult for him. So it's not a terrible thing if he would skip one or two, where he would say it without that much intention. because it's only a din lechatchila, and sometimes it's too overwhelming, too overpowering. It can bring deep depression. So it's better to do the best you can, so to speak. But anyway, so far as the theoretical aspect is concerned, so that's why it's really difficult to really feel it. You can read it, that's no problem, but to feel it is very, very difficult. But a moment ago, we mentioned that it's also courageous. Why would we want to say for somebody to admit that he failed, to admit that he made a terrible mistake, rebelled against the wishes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of his fellow man, of his HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Where do we have such a source? So we have no problem with that, because everyone brings down the source. The Shlo doesn't have to bring down the source because everybody already brought down the source. And that, of course, is Medrash Rabo in Bereshis. Medrash Rabo basically asks this question, and we'll take a look at it. Here it is. So the question naturally arises, the Chazal also asked the question, right? We know that when the Pasuk says, Vayetze Kayin Lifnei Hashem, this is the Medrash Rabo, Perek Chov Beis, Poga Bo Yodam Rishon. What does it mean, Vayetze Kayin? Lifnei Hashem, there was a din Torah. He was tried by one judge, that's the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the question was, will he be acquitted? Will he be held guilty for the murder of his brother? And if he will be, what will be his sentence? And Chazal were extremely bothered by a question. After he asked them this question, so Cain said, what was the verdict? So he said, I was able to make some sort of compromise with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and he is not going to hold me totally accountable for this Avera. So Adam was amazed, because Adam Arishon did not commit murder. Cain killed his brother Hevel. He ate a fruit, ate a das that was forbidden for him to eat. So what was the sin that he committed by eating this fruit? Let's say it was trephis, nevelis, right? So it was also to eat. What was so terrible about this Avera? And God punished him immediately. He was banished from Gan Eden. Chava immediately was punished, and not only she was punished, but all women throughout all the ages, Gentile and Jew alike, will have tsar leido, etc. The punishment, due to the fact that the wrath of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu blazed forth, was immediate. And the HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed no mercy whatsoever. The Mauritian lost Gan Eden and he lost his immortality. He brought death into the world. And now he himself, after he was banished and expelled from Gan Eden, will have to face the vicious vicissitudes of life, cruelty of nature, be difficult for him to grow anything from the earth, Arura, Adomo, Bavurech, because of you now the earth was cursed. And at first glance, we don't see that was such a terrible Avera, in contrast to Cain killing a brother, killing half the world. So what was the answer? The answer was an unbelievable answer. Asisi tshuva, because I did some sort of tshuva for this pasharti, and I was able to be mispasher, make a compromise with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So then we have something which is overwhelming. Hischil Odom Arisha Metapeach al Ponov, Odom Rishon started to hit his face. Omar, Kachu Koicha Shel Tshuva V'ani Lo Isi Yodeya. I didn't realize this was the koyach of tshuva. So if we ask ourselves a question, right? Medrash Tanchuma says the same answer, Asisi tshuva. So what's basically and HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed unlimited mercy to Cain. You cannot kill Cain. Ultimately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will punish him. But even Cain here became a builder. He built a city for his son. He had a divine protection. He had a letter of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name affixed to his forehead. What was the sin of Adam HaRishon? So it wasn't just the act of eating and transgressing, violating the Isur, we call it Eitzagan Toichal. However, Eitzadas, Seichagan Toivara, Eitzadas Toivara, no, it just did not exhaust itself in violating the Isur Achila. Neither did the Chet of Adam HaRishon exhaust itself in what Rashi says. He was an ingrate. Because he said, so Isha Shenasata Imodi. So Rashi said, once he said, Isha Shenasata Imodi, she was the one that gave me the fruit. So he was kafar b'tivas Shalmakam. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave Adam HaRishon precious gift of Chava. Why did he give him a precious gift of Chava? Very simple. There's no question about it. It's very, very simple because Adam HaRishon, we had the whole world in front of him, and he was miserable in his loneliness, his existential loneliness, and therefore Kadosh Baruch Hu gave him an Eivzu K'negdoi. So he was an ingrate. Violated the Ratzon of the Kadosh Baruch Hu by eating? No, that's not the Aveira. Ingratitude also does not exhaust the Aveira. What was the Aveira? As a Isha Shenasata Imodi, not that you gave me. It doesn't say Isha Shenasata Li. Imodi, that you gave with me, that she should be with me, and that she should supervise my life. She's responsible because she failed miserably in what she was designated by you for, to be imodi, to be with me on every step of the way, and worry not just for my physical well-being, but for my spiritual well-being as well. So she's at fault. She's blameworthy. He could not say chotasi. Cain said chotasi. Cain said, to man the alatzmi. I wonder, I have a wonder of myself. How did I do it? After he did it, and all of us on different occasions also come to such a feeling. How could I have done such a thing? It was absolutely ridiculous. Even though at the time that we did it, we thought this was the proper thing to do. But afterwards, somehow or other, when we become enlightened, so we say, how could I have done it? And he had the courage to say he was totally wrong. No extenuating circumstances. Bemazed. I killed a brother. And that's why he was saved. Odom could not come to confess the Aveira. I'm responsible. After all, Rabbeinu Shem, you told me not to eat. I had to relay the message to Chavit. Maybe she didn't understand well, but for me, I understood perfectly. It was clear. You told me. How I did it, I have no idea. A total miscalculation. But I sinned. And I take responsibility. I failed on the first day of my creation. Self-condemnation. Self-reproach. Bittul atzmi, difficult for a person to negate his value. After all, the second after Cain did it, he saw he was a worthless being. How could he have done such a crazy thing? Murder a brother, half the world. He was incapable to assume responsibility. So therefore, he lost Gan Eden, lost immortality, and brought destruction to the world. And if we complain about the length of the Al-Chet, so we should know that deep down in our subconsciousness is even a longer list. What is that list? Of all the excuses we have for each Al-Chet that doesn't apply to us, or there was extenuating circumstances, because we cannot say Al-Chet shechatanu lefanecha, clear as the day we are responsible. We have corroded our personalities. We would love to restore our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We don't know why we did it, if it was done through intellectual type of calculation, that it will be better off. It was foolish. It was totally ridiculous. This is what an Al-Chet has to be. So the Goin Siddur points out that you don't have Dinei Tshuva, Yom Kippur. You don't have anywhere where you say, after Chotose Visi Pashati, Boishti, Nichlamti, V'nichamti, I have total regret. And Isaiah says, Shuva Yisrael, Hashem Elokecha, Shuva, Isaiah says, Busha. I'm ashamed of myself. I can't look myself in the mirror. Total shame, total embarrassment, that you can't even face HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And acceptance that you'll never do it again. And you're so confident that you won't do it again that you're willing to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu an aid, a testimony to your integrity. Very difficult. You don't have that on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, you have just one thing. Chotasi avisi pashati. Hakara sachet. Awareness that you are indeed in need of a kapara, of atonement. You need atonement. And you have to believe that Yom Kippur will atone for you. The Kedushas Hayom will atone for you. That's the Ramah. Somebody doesn't believe in this abstract concept that the day after you pass through Yom Kippur for 24 hours, 26 hours, will atone for you, so will not have atonement. We just need awareness that we have failed in our mission to do the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whatever the reason, pleasure, advancement of our career, political fortune, whatever it is, it was a mistake. We say it wasn't worth it. That's a courageous act, and that has to be done with integrity. The halachas of facing HaKadosh Baruch Hu and saying, Boishti, Nechlamti, V'nichamti, I regret it, really regret it, and I'm totally ashamed that I do it. Those elements of tshuva that have to be done b'leiv shalem do not exist Yom Kippur. Of course, you'll have a person who says that he sinned. So obviously, he has some sort of feelings of regret, but it doesn't express itself in the demands and the requirements that pet l'fnei Hashem orally, spelling it out and expressing it l'fnei Hashem like regular tshuva. The reason we have excuses is because we want to feel good about ourselves. Why does somebody excuse an act that he did or extenuating circumstances? Because you can't stand this bad feeling. It's a contradiction to your self-image, of self-glorification, of self-love, that you're a great person. That's required. And if a person can come to that awareness in both sectors, so he's zoicha to something outstanding. At the end of the Mishnah, we say something which we don't say any other time. Ashre Omar Rebbe Kiva. And we'll conclude with this. There's a lot more to speak out, but we'll conclude with this. Omar Rebbe Kiva, Ashrechem Yisrael. Yom Kippur is a happy day. It's a day of good fortune. Shenemal, because we have to realize, it's a realization and awareness. This is a realization and awareness not of our failures, our shortcomings, our worthlessness. V'ashrechem Yisrael lifnei mi atem mitarim u'mi mitayar eschem avichem shebashamayim shenema v'zarakti alechem mayim tohichem u'tahaltem mikve Yisrael Hashem ma mikve mitayar esatmeim afakadosh baruch hu mitayar Yisrael. On Yom Kippur, if we just have that awareness that we need it, we need the atonement, but we also need something more than that. We have to restore, rehabilitate our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And it's corrosive. It's corroded through sin. We're distant. We won't have that warm relationship anymore. We will. It'll be restored. Who's going to restore the Kadosh Baruch Hu? Ashrechem Yisrael, because the day of Yom Kippur, if we could just do the little bit that we have to do, so it's a great day, a powerful day, but the greatness of the day expresses itself that Kadosh Baruch Hu comes to us like a father. Here it says Avichem. In front of who you become pure, who got rid of your dross, who got rid of all the filth and dirt that accumulated in your inner personality, in the nefesh, in the neshama, all that dirt that penetrated. So how fortunate you are, because who purges you? Who cleanses you? Avichem shebashamayim, your Father in heaven. Ovinu is stressed. You're not Malkeinu. Malkeinu is an awesome king that precipitates feelings of fear, dread. Here it's a question not of Yira, but of Avo. Ashrechem, how fortunate and happy you should be, Klal Yisrael. Why? Mikveh Yisrael Hashem. Who is the mikveh? That's mitayr you, that cleanses you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Uma mikveh mitayr es hatmeim, just like a mikveh takes off the tumah, the defilement of a person. Af HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitayr Yisrael on Yom Kippur. All that dirt and dross that accumulated in the course of the year, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes a big brush and soap and cleanses us spiritually, that at the end of Yom Kippur, we are new beings, totally cleansed of all the negative aspects and impact of Aveirus. We have no need to suffer any oinshim. Kalal Yisrael now has restored the relationship of vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if we just have the courage to admit our shortcomings, vis-a-vis our friends, it's difficult, vis-a-vis our enemies, to go to an enemy and say, I did an injustice to you, please forgive me. I want to be meratze. You have to find ways of expressing words of appeasement, difficult. And of course, if somebody's on his way up and he lives on a 5th floor, there's no elevator. So each step that he takes, his heart pounds in him, because it could be that when he knocks on the door and the person sees him, will throw him down the steps. He'll spit in his face for what he did. So his heart pounds in him. It's really difficult. He's worried that he will be embarrassed, humiliated. He overcomes that, shows heroism, courage, and tells his fellow man, Chatasi Avisi Pashati, I did you an injustice. I took away your parnasa. I spoke lashon hara about you. It was injurious. It was harmful for you and the family. So then he will be totally cleansed also of those averos. And he will now have a restored relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as if he was newborn at that moment, mamish. So that part is really difficult, and we hope that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should forgive all our sins. We should do what we're mechuyev to do in Yom Kippur, and we should have a restoration of the relation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to us. She'avinu shebashamayim should look at us like bonim, and should address all our needs in a critical time when the Jewish people face destruction, malevolence on all fronts. We hope after Yom Kippur, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will also be aroused to be a real father who worries exclusively for the well-being of his children, if we could restore our relationship as children to our Father.